What's up, guys? It's Lefty here, and we got a good one. Thursday night primetime. NFC North divisional game Packers Lions. This is a rematch from week 9 where the Lions won on the road in Lambeau. Remember now, with most Thursday night games, it's a short week, less time to prepare. That's not what we have here in this game. This is a full week of prep for both teams as they both played on Thanksgiving last Thursday. But also keep in mind, when you have a divisional game, short weeks mean less because both teams are so familiar with each other. If we look at the week 9 matchup, you could kind of argue 24-14 Lions win was a little bit misleading. Green Bay had 150 more total yards, almost 2 more full yards per play, but Green Bay did get a lot of those yards late in the fourth quarter when they were trailing by double digits, and Detroit went to a more softer, like prevent style defense. The Lions covered easily as 2.5 point road favorites in that game. Now, this week 14 game here, the Lions are currently listed as 3.5 point home favorites, but this look ahead line last week prior to the Thanksgiving Day games had the Lions -6 for this game. Looking at my numbers 2 weeks ago, prior to Thanksgiving, I would have had the Lions -6 on a neutral field. I had Lions 7.5 or 7.7 points better than a league average team, and then Green Bay 1.7 points better than league average. So when you combine those numbers, you have Detroit -6, but of course this game is in Detroit. They have a pretty big home field advantage, so giving Detroit 1.5 points for home field advantage, I would have made Detroit favorites of 7.5 points in this game if it was played 2 weeks ago. So what has happened since then to warrant this adjustment down? How do we get to Detroit -3.5, and is this adjustment down justified? Even if we're just talking about the adjustment down from Detroit -6, which was the look-ahead line last week, never mind the adjustment down from my own numbers of Detroit -7.5 2 weeks ago. Looking at the Detroit side first, they're coming off a rare non-cover game last week versus Detroit Lions, who are 46-18 against the spread in the Dan Campbell era. They were up 16 points heading into the fourth quarter last week, got outscored 13-0 in the fourth quarter, and ended up winning by 3 points, failing to cover as 10-point favorites. Remember, NFL spreads are largely influenced by recency bias and what has happened most recently. But the Lions failing to cover last week isn't enough to warrant this adjustment alone. We can definitely point at all the defensive injuries, and I've talked about this the past couple of weeks with Detroit's all these key pieces in the Lions defense that are hurt. It started with Aid Hutchinson, and then since then, each week it seems like different players just keep getting hurt, and it's starting to be noticed more and more. You can't just lose starters and then their backups and it just not catch up to you. The most recent injuries on defense, DJ Reader, who I think is a top 3 nose tackle in the league, is out, along with both defensive ends, Josh Pascal, and then Levi Omus. Also, linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez is out, who's been really good as a fill-in for Alex Anzalone, who's the defensive captain and signal caller, who was lost a couple weeks ago. These injuries are pretty much a byproduct of Dan Campbell not letting his foot off the gas in the second half and running up the scores, keeping starters in while having 4 touchdown leads. That's just how he coaches, and this is the downside to it. You get players banged up. Detroit could really use a bye week right now, which is the downside to having such an early season bye week. I think Detroit's bye week was like week 5 or 6 or something. So we have a Detroit defense that's banged up and coming off a 3-point win as double-digit favorites. So what's Green Bay been up to recently? Well, they've now won 7 of their last 8 games, with that only loss coming from Detroit. Green Bay has definitely been upgraded over the course of the last few games after a 28-point win versus San Fran and then a double-digit win versus Miami on Thanksgiving night. So now we start to get an idea of why this line is down to Detroit -3.5. We can say an adjustment is definitely warranted. I don't think Detroit should be -6 and definitely not -7.5, but I do think the adjustment is a little too much. If we look at Green Bay's recent wins, they benefited a great deal from turnover luck. Ton of short fields, given to Green Bay's offense from either turnovers or special teams mistakes. And yes, the Lions' front seven is riddled with injuries. That's certainly being priced into this adjustment. But the Lions are getting back cornerbacks, Carlton Davis, who wasn't available last week versus the Bears, and also Emmanuel Mosley, who hasn't played all year. So this is a big boost to the secondary, and it doesn't seem to be getting factored in at all. It seems like the loss of the guys up front are only being priced in, and they are significant losses, no question, but you'd think some of that would be canceled out with the return of these guys in the secondary. What's interesting here is, now we have a Lions team that's getting healthier in the secondary, but much weaker up front defending the run. Now, if you're Green Bay, you'd assume they'd want to attack the ground. Basically, what they did last week versus Miami, who was without some key run stuffers. Josh Jacobs' prop numbers are something to keep an eye on. You'd expect him to have a heavy workload, but he is a little banged up. He's been limited at practice all week. Packers head coach said he wants to mix in some other running backs to limit the workload on Jacobs. Josh Jacobs' rush attempts are currently at 16.5. It closed 17.5 attempts last week, and he got 19. I'm interested to see what this number does here. I like the over in this game, but that half point on 51 really scares me, and it's enough to keep me off betting it as of now. If I could get 51 at minus 110, I'd bet it. And buying buying a half point, 251 isn't how you solve that problem. Over 51 at minus 120 or minus 125 isn't the same as over 51 at minus 110. 51 is a very key number on the total, so that half point is significant. It's only a half point, but it's a very important half point. The same way a half point is important on 7 or 3. I think both offenses can move the ball. Detroit will be able to move the ball on this Green Bay defense. If you look at the Green Bay defense and their advanced metrics, there's a big red flag. It's something that always concerns me when evaluating a team's offense or defense. When you see a unit that's top 10 in EPA per play allowed, like Green Bay is, but bottom 5 in success rate allowed, that tells me they're phony or getting away with a ton of luck, and it should start to even out. EPA per play and success rate allowed shouldn't have that big of a gap, and those EPA per play numbers will start to move towards the success rate numbers. Now, on the other side, I think Green Bay can move the ball against this banged up Detroit defense, especially running the ball, which also worries me taking the over when you need 51 plus points, and it seems like the pathway to success for both teams is on the ground. If I have any official plays or props, they'll be posted in the Discord. That's all I got for this one. Until next time, good luck with your bets.